I will be record. Thank you. Thank you, Megan, for that. Now we are recording. So say that now. Let me go to the next slide. Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank to Library 2.0 for accepting my talk and allowing me not only to share, but to learn with all of you. A special recognition to Ray Pan, co-organizer of this event, and who I hope will be the next president of the ALA. Likewise, thanks to the School of Information at San Jose University and Future of AI for the sponsorship of this meeting. So let's go into the theme. I am Santiago Villegas, as I told you before. I am from Colombia. I'm a librarian here. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I fully believe that libraries are the best transformers of the world. I'm a Colombian librarian who has transitioned from engineering to librarianship, and from there to marketing and social innovation in my master's studies. I'm proudly grandson, nephew, and son of librarians. So I always say that I was not kept in nurseries, but in libraries. So from a very young age, I was already moving between shelves and catalog cards. I was lucky enough to study engineering in Medellin just when the internet became public in Colombia in 1996. So I still have my Hotmail. If you have a Hotmail, you can see my old age in my hairstyle. And my first job was teaching how to use the internet around the same time, around the 1996. And that's how I discovered the power of digital literacy in the world. Currently, I am dedicated to helping libraries around the world, especially in Latin America, to implement digital culture to enhance their social impact. Some will call it digital transformation. I prefer to call it human-centered library transformation. So I have been working with artificial intelligence in 2009. The first applied project was the development of the Medellin Media Library for the Semantic Web, a digital library with the machine tagging, semi-automatic tagging, that along with our digital literacy program in the city's libraries in Medellin, earned us a Gates Foundation Award. As a result, I worked with the Foundation's Beyond Access program on library transformation projects in Paraguay, in Peru, in Colombia, in Nigeria, in Philippines. So here I am, like you, surprised by how fast these last years have been with generative AI. And that's the first thing we are going to say about AI. Today, we will talk about generative artificial intelligence, the one that, thanks to machine learning and deep learning, is able to produce new information based on its training. We are not talking about artificial intelligence as a whole, because it's a lot of that in artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about generative artificial intelligence. Okay, that said, let's focus on what we are in Latin America and what we have right now in Latin America. It's important to put in context that when I mention the South in the title of the conference, I'm referring especially of Latin America, not the global South, but Latin America. And here is a key fact about AI in Latin America. You can see that if you go to the web page that I told here, that is the Latin American Index of AI, you can see that they told that only 2.7% of the accumulated scientific in AI publications in journal belong to Latin America. And the combined investments of all Latin America countries, I read that, the combined investments of all Latin America countries does not exceed the 1.7% of the amount of US. So we are very far behind the other countries on this. Even on that, you must remember that in the region, we are very young. We are a very young population here. We have an average age close to 30 years old, which puts most of our people in what some will still call digital natives. I don't think that there's digital natives, but most of the people here are, around 30 years old. This, added to the poor legislation that we have around privacy and the use of personal data, make us the testing ground of many startups and applications that are not yet launched in the first world countries. In fact, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia are among the countries with the highest relative number of ChatGPT users over their population, all over the world. So that's why a friend of mine, Cristian Maturana Maturana, it's a Chilean librarian and director of innovation at the Santiago Library. We decided to create and facilitate the first free and open course on introduction to artificial intelligence for librarian that you can find on YouTube. You can see it right now on these slides. It's an open and free course. Even it has subtitles, and you can subtitle in English if you want. So this is an 8 hours training that begin with fundamental concepts, including ethical dilemmas, and go up to the implementation of basic AI solutions in libraries. To date, it has been viewed by more than 7,200 people, of which at least 3,000 librarians have received a certificate for completing the course. I mean, 3,000 librarians in Latin America and in Spain. In mid-April, we will be updating this content with a new course because it has now 11 months old. But it happens a lot of things on the AI world. Even if you can see that the first 2 hours of the course, most of this content is still, is still updated because it's about the fundamental concepts on AI. So you are invited to watch the update of the course on mid-April. The new course will be 12 hours long, 4 more hours than this one. So that's why in this course, it was the experience on this course that taught us the findings that I will share with you in the other slides, and that has encouraged us to help implement in a much closer way free or open AI solutions in Latin American library. Let's talk about what we discover and how this connects to the topic that brings us together today. So the main thing, the most important thing that we discover, even though in Latin America we are proud library pirates. There's some colleagues from Latin America there that I say hello to them. We are proudly pirates, and by this mean I think that we do everything to deliver the content that the user needs, even when that means resorting to Sci-Hub or similars. Is because we don't have the resources to get all these database, all these resources that you got maybe in some of the libraries in the first world. So even when we are pirates, Latin American librarians already use generative AI in their daily lives. They are ashamed to admit that they using it in professional environments. That's kind of ironic, especially due to the myths that have been generalized by news headlines and false prophets of AI. And we're going to take a little break here, or what I call it, a digestive parenthesis, to begin debunking those myths. So let's talk about this image. To dispel the main myths around generative AI among fellow librarians, I have come up with this analogy to explain what they are. You are seeing right now an image generated by an AI, Adobe's Firefly. That's the AI that you can use to generate images like this one, with the instruction to create a non-binary android sitting in a Latin American library at dusk next to a windows that shows the typical landscape of the mountains of Medellin, my city. In my lectures and intervention, I ask librarians to imagine together how ChatGPT, OpenAI's large language model, has been created. Let's imagine together right now, let's put this on your brains. Let's imagine that we have an Android with a very powerful brain, full of artificial neurons, but without any knowledge yet. We are going to lock that Android in a library that contains dozens of billions of documents. And I mean dozens of billions of documents. Pay attention to this figure because it is larger than what most of our library collections have. We give this Android the task of learning human language. We define a purpose. This the first pass. The first step is to define a purpose, and we tell him that to achieve this purpose, he must read all the documents in the library. So he must learn the human language, and to do it, he will read the documents on the library. I mean, it's he or she, whatever you want to call it, because it's non-binary. Okay, because this android has the ability to learn. That's the very different things with AIs. The modern AIs are programmed to learn, not to do things specifically, but to learn, okay? This Android has the ability to learn because the programmer has given it a mathematical technique to do so, and because we have labeled each of those documents that the library has. It's not as simple as you log an Android and tell it, read all of this. You have to tag every document on this library, okay? And you have to program it to learn. When you have these three things, you give it a purpose, you give it the big data, the documents on the library, and you give it the ability to learn with a mathematical technique, make it by the programmer. Then it's capable of generating a mathematical structure of the human language within his huge brain. So this gives him the ability to answer any question we ask. We ask him based on the information he knows about the library he's logged in. In other words, he will look for the most likely answer to whatever I tell him. Okay? So that depends on the number of times the Android may have observed similar question within the library documentary corpus. This means that if the library had exclusively an ancient collection of documents prior to 100 and 1500, the 16th century, the robot probably did not know about what America is or anything associated with the continent. So the knowledge of this Android is by definition biased, and biased not only by what is not in the library, but by the way we humans write down everything that is there. If that knowledge reflects us, the Android is a reflection of us, okay? On the other hand, this Android was given the task of learning the language. So he did not memorize all the content of the library. This is another myth, Rather, he used its general parameters to understand how to converse, how to chat with a human. To be clearer, imagine the text with which you learn to read or write. Do you remember the textbook in your school, this book that you used to learn to write or read? Do you remember? Do you remember every example of that book? Maybe not, right? Because that book was not intended to memorize it, was intended to learn, to teach you how to read. And that's how we program the machines. That is why they cannot verbatim cite the content with which they have been trained. They can only cite with certainty content that they access outside of the documents with which they have been trained. For example, the internet in Perplexity. Do you know Perplexity? This very good AI that use internet and that use a chatbot between the internet and you. When we use ChatGPT in its free version, and that's the very important thing of this slide, when we use ChatGPT in its free version, or Claude, or Mixtral, or any chatbot that does not have internet access capabilities, we are using an Android locked in a library that was not trained to answer factual questions, but to speak, to chat. First and most important myth, solved, okay? Perplexity is very good, Herling. It's very good. So what's the key findings that we that we found on our librarians on this course that we did with more than 7,000 librarians in Latin America. This is the 4 myths that we want to debunk here, and then we want to make bridges with you, because I think that's the same myths that maybe you have there in US or in other regions in the world. First of all, AI is not smart. Okay, today artificial intelligence is based on probabilistic models, as I told you. It's about how many times the question that I ask has appeared in this knowledge base, and maybe the answer behind that is, for example, when I ask what's the capital of French, it's Paris, because it appears a lot of times in the corpus. Okay, but it's not smart. It's just probabilities, statistics. The second one, AI doesn't learn from us all the time. The AI training process is complex and usually, and when I say usually is almost all the time, requires the use of structure and label data. That's kind of data that we love in libraries, okay? They have to pass all this video, all these images, all this text to train AI to people that put this label, these tags manually on this data before the AI can train of that. It does not learn in real time or remember everything we say. That's a myth. Okay, that's a myth. The other myth is, and this is kind of a mixed truth, AI infringe copyright. And I put this, this question there because current AIs are trained with data available on the internet, generally without the consent of the authors. So if this is considered fair use or not is still being determined. But right now we know that, for example, ChatGPT use a database of around 50,000 pirates books. So that's kind of ironic. So we want to talk, and we have to talk about copyright infringement theories at fair use. And the other thing is that AI is dangerous. AI is not intrinsically dangerous, but it does present greater risk because since we do not fully know how it works, and let me go back to the Android that we locked in the library. When we have these big brains, these big artificial neurons, we know what we give to the Android to learn. We know every document in the library, and we know the answer that they give us. But the neurons in the middle, the hundreds of billions of neurons that the Android has in their brains, we don't know. We don't know how every neuron works. That's why they hallucinate. And that's why we don't know why they hallucinate, because we can't go and ask every neuron how they understand the language. That's very different. So when you hear that some people compare, maybe a hammer with AI because we can do a hammer for good or for bad, it's not the same thing, because you can see the full structure of a hammer. You can't see the full structure of AI. Okay, but what we do, so to summarize that, the AI are like parrots, because they are all and I see the drunk parrots, because maybe you are that people, or maybe you have friends that are that people that when they take 1 or 2 beers, they begin to talk a lot, and they begin to tell a lot of stories that maybe aren't true, but sounds really good. That's the kind of AI that we have now, like parrots that talk a lot. They talk a lot of things. Most of them are not real, so are very good to tell stories, are very good to build literature, are very good to build fictions. But you see, they are not made to be facts, to be factical, to be, to be a chatbot, to use it through meanings. So what we are doing in Latin America with AI to, to debunk these myths and to implement and to go into the conversation, because we think that the best way to hack the system is to be inside it. That which we are co-creating and implementing AI solutions right now in Latin America. So we are doing chatbots for reference and reading promotion. One of those chatbots that I really like a lot is one that we call Biblio-Asesino. If you go, let me give you in the chat of this meeting the URL of Biblio-Asesino. If you go to Biblio-Asesino, is poe.com/Biblio-Asesino. You can just ask him to suggest you some books, and they will act as this kind of librarian that doesn't want to be interrupted, that like to read a lot, that close the library door a little in hope to the people doesn't enter to the library. So it's a very, it's a very ironic and sarcastic librarian that you enjoy to ask what book to read, and it works. So this is one of the experiments that we do with our libraries in Latin America. The other experiments that we do in Latin America, it's the cataloging experiments, the second ones. We are using ChatGPT and we are using Claude to cataloging with Dewey classification system with other doing, and we are doing it in a rate close to 82% of truthness of this cataloging. We have systems to enhance accessibility right now in the University of Antioquia and in Chile, in the Biblioteca of Santiago. We have audio description, automatic audio descriptions in the in the cell phones, in the smartphones of the people with some disabilities there, and we're using AI, and we're giving this to the people there. Another one, the most recent one that we are using right now is the one that I really love to share with you. We are using assistance to defining the library return of investment. We are not only doing content curation, for example, to search, to find the average note of the students that we have around the library, and to compare the students that comes to the library with those that doesn't come to the library, and how the library affect the people that goes to the library. We are doing, assisted data analysis to find the library ROI in Latin America, because we have to go to the to the mayorships, to the culture secretary, and give them some figures of how the people are are receiving the impact of the libraries there, because we have really financial problems here in Latin America. So we're doing right now. We will be in PLA. If you go to PLA in Columbus, Ohio, in a couple of weeks, we will be there. We will be sharing about this, how we are defining ROI in libraries with assistance, in Latin America library with chatbot assistance. And this is all, my friends. If you have any questions, I only have to say a little conclusion that artificial intelligence gives us the opportunity to empower what makes us human, empathy and creativity. The machines can't do that yet, at least. They can't understand the empathy. They can't understand the people as a whole. So we have to use empathy to understand and integrate the others, the different, the diverse in who we are as a library, and creativity to co-create library services that help us to transform our worlds. So that's me when I have some hair a couple of years ago. My email, you can go to Santiago at medellin.co.co. At Medellin is my name in every social network. You can find me in Twitter, in Instagram, in LinkedIn, in Facebook, in TikTok, like this one, like MEDEJAN, Medellin. So we can talk there. And if there's any question, I'm here to answer you. Thank you very much. We have a couple of minutes there. So let me see, what time is it? Okay, we have 4 more minutes. I don't know if it's, let me show you, because we have 4 more minutes. Let me show you live the examples that I just told you we have. This is the Biblioasesino, you know. The Biblioasesino is is the reference librarian, as I told you, we create in the course. And so you can see that I ask him in English, hello, I need a book with beauty. It's specifically beauty. I write it wrong, photos. And he answered me in Spanish. Oh no, more visitors looking for books with images. Okay, let me ask, do you are searching you for something with Walt Whitman? No, you don't look like the kind of guy. I think that you maybe like to see some exotics, landscapes. I'm here to inform you that these libraries only have very high study books and poetry from the golden century Spain. So it's kind of ironic, sarcastic. So it's very good to interact with them. Megan asked a question. I'm interested in how ChatGPT is being used in Latin America versus the United States. That's the kind of question that I want to answer going to PLA and to ALA annual conference. I'll be there. So we work focused in Latin America right now. I've been reading a lot about how you are using it in the United States. You are, for example, using it in cataloging in very deep ways that we are done using it, not using it here. You are using it, for example, in media and information literacy there. We are not using it here in that ways. Another thing is that we are not using commercial solutions here. We are using free or open solutions. And we are using it without the limitations of a regulation, So it's kind of different because we are not so worried about our privacy. That's maybe not good, but that's make us some advantage to the context of Latin America. On the dangers of stochastic parrots, can language model be too big? That's really good, Maxon. Thank you to answer that. Yes, we are talking about stochastic parrots, right? That's the term that define the AI. So some people say, in purpose of your question there, Maxon, some people say is that when the AI have all the knowledge, when we can lock the Android in a library that have all the human knowledge inside, maybe this will be the moment that they begin to think like humans. I don't think so. I think the problem is not about the size. It's about the way that they understand the language. So I hope everything it's clear right now. And please feel free to contact me in social networks at Medellin. Let me put you my social networks here and see you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.